A jury has found Jennifer Crumbley, mother of Michigan school shooter Ethan Crumbley, guilty of involuntary manslaughter for her willful neglect of her son. Ethan Crumbley was found guilty in connection with the shooting deaths of 4 students at Oxford High School in November 2021, namely Madison Baldwin, 17, Tate Myers, 16, Justin Schilling, 17, and Hannah Sanjuliana, 14. Awful. Here's footage of Jennifer Crumbley receiving her guilty verdict.
Count 1 of involuntary manslaughter as to Madison Baldwin, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter. On count 2 of involuntary manslaughter in regards to Tate Muir, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter. On count 3 as to involuntary manslaughter regarding Hannah St. Juliana, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter. And in count 4 of involuntary manslaughter against Justin Schilling, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter. Thank you for warning.
Jennifer and James Crumbley are a rare case of parents being charged in connection with a shooting carried out by their son in a day-long trial. Prosecutors presented who bought their son the gun that was used in the shooting. It was, in fact, the parents.
Prosecutors said Jennifer was a negligent mother and revealed how she was having an affair with a fire captain. Crumbley ignored her son, who had clear mental health problems and who had been reaching out for help. A journal entry from Ethan read, quote, "My parents won't listen to me about help or a therapist. I have zero help from my mental health problems, and it's causing me to shoot up the school." Ethan Crumbley is serving a life prison sentence without the possibility of parole.
So this is a obviously horrible thing that occurred, and the actions of the parents seem totally reprehensible from a moral point of view. They seem like really awful parents. Now they say they didn't read his journal entry. That he'd never expressed a desire to receive mental health counseling, that they had no idea he'd expressed a desire to shoot up a school. They did buy him a gun as a Christmas present. The next week, he went to school. He made some notes about doing a mass shooting, blood everywhere. Those were seen. He was taken to a counselor's office. The parents were called in, and he'd already had the gun at the school. He'd planted it in the school somewhere. And they said
it was in his backpack.
Yeah,
which they did not search after discovering these images that were so alarming that they called his parents.
Which is frankly wrongdoing on the school's part as well, one might expect. So then he was allowed to return to class after he said, "No, I'm not going to do a mass shooting."
It is the school's fault, but the parents know something that the school doesn't know, which is that they had just purchased him a gun.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and then he perpetrates this mass shooting, and he is in prison for life. So they charged and convicted the mother. They've also charged the father. So I certainly understand why they would do that. But there is I was reading an article written at Reason Magazine about the case where I also write, taking issue with the charges and saying there really isn't a law in Michigan that correctly criminalizes what she's alleged to have done. Some states have a law that criminalizes giving a minor a gun in some reckless way. Michigan specifically does not have that law. Another aspect of it is that, so they charged him as an adult, the kid, as an adult. So it's a little weird to say, well, he's an adult and getting the punishment of an adult because he is responsible. He's an adult, so he's responsible for his actions. But then from the standpoint of charging his parents, he's this underage child whom they are ultimately responsible for. And I think you can't really have it. You shouldn't have it both ways.
And it frustrates me greatly that the idea of being a minor versus an adult is a formality in so many cases because so many minors are in fact charged in that way. So I agree with you there, and I think I'm not as familiar with the laws involved in this case. It seems from this Reason Magazine write-up that there isn't anything that really would go to this, and so they kind of making it up out of whole cloth. That being said, a case like this does seem to be a really good argument for passing that kind of legislation. The levels of negligence here seem to be multifold. The mother says in her testimony that she was not aware of these mental health issues. It seems frankly unlikely. She characterized repeated statements from her son that the house was haunted as him joking. He obviously says in his journal entry that he had told his parents that he had mental health issues and wanted a therapist. So it's a he said, she said, but I mean, it does strike me as curious that a child would write, I've asked my parents for help and they won't get it to me. For an audience of who exactly, if it weren't true? It's a private journal. The incredible negligence of purchasing your son a pistol. From my perspective, in the first instance, you can make some kind of a case about a hunting rifle and it being a cultural pastime. You can even make some argument about pistols being self-defense.
They did go shooting as an activity, as a family activity.
But to purchase a minor a pistol, to then be called into school because your son has drawn a gun with images about, with words about bloodshed and not being able to get it out of your brain on the gun, and to not tell the school that he has a pistol exactly like the one that's been drawn, similar enough to the one that's been drawn, that you should maybe consider checking his backpack, checking his locker. The fact that the family didn't have some rules, a lockbox, something to monitor the son's behavior with the deadly weapon.
So Michigan did subsequently pass a law with respect to how you have to store guns properly, but that law also was not on the books at the time. So they can't charge them with that either.
This is a tragic case, and I can appreciate why morally there is this effort to construe the law in a way that holds these parents accountable, because it does seem like they are accountable. It seems like
an unusual level of direct. Now, often in a lot of other mass shooting cases that we've covered, there is a lot of indications that something is wrong. And sometimes, in fact, parents and family members do speak up. That was the case of the Parkland shooter in Florida, where people saw something and said something. Family and friends complained to repeated authorities, to the school authorities, to the local police, to the FBI, and nothing was done. But this was a case where there seems to have been a lot of knowledge of something being wrong, and that he had a gun, and he had drawn these photos. That day, he was already planning to do it. There was actually a rumor at the school that there was about to be a mass shooting. I think the day before, and the school debunked that and said everything's fine, everybody come to school. So there might be some, frankly, wrongdoing on the school's part as well.
That definitely seems right. I don't know if you're going to get it in a place where it's
criminally chargeable.
Manslaughter, exactly. But holy smokes, what a tragic situation. And it is nice to hear that there was some legislative response to trying to close these kind of loopholes. I would also be curious to know what the rules are with respect to gifting guns and how that bumps up against any kind of red flag law or mental health checks that would be required by someone who's buying a gun for themselves.
I do think a person who misuses a gun, uses a gun to kill people, that person is the person responsible for what happens by and large, but this person was technically a minor, and there seems to be a lot of and they were convicted, but so clearly a jury thought there was enough based on the law to convict these people to convict the mother at least of negligence. This seems pretty exceptional case of potentially actual negligence. But there you have it. Tomorrow on Rising, we will be back for our Thursday edition of our show. Me and Briahna, we will see you there.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while you're on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Goodbye.
Take care.